Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book, Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. 2, because I'm a fan of punk music. And 3, it's just more fun, right? Anyway, if this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. And please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. Anyway, that's enough from me right now. Let's get into the interview. A big thank you goes out to the folks at Sugar CRM for sponsoring my podcast this month. Now, Sugar CRM is the provider of the #1 rated customer experience platform, which is trusted by thousands of companies all over the world and helps them achieve high definition CX. Recently, they released their new CRM and sales impact report, which surveyed 1,000 sales professionals from around the globe on what's driving or stalling revenue and customer engagement. The report also asks a provocative question. Are companies on the cusp of a customer relationship crisis? To find out the answer, find the report in the resources section of sugarcrm.com. Now, let's get back to the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Steve Lucas, who is the CEO of iCIMS, which is otherwise known as, or abbreviated, well, it's pronounced iCIMS, let's say, but it's ICIMS. And that's like a bit of a kind of introduction for you, Steve. But hello and welcome, and apologies for my kind of slightly fluffed intro.
It's quite all right. I'm thrilled to be here. It's great to spend some time talking about it. It's iCIMS is this company that's entirely focused on building and delivering a recruiting platform. And rather than figuring out the acronym, we'll just talk about what we do.
Well, no, please do that. I mean, that's what I was going to say. You just sort of jumped in and almost sort of stole my thunder, as it were, because I wanted to go and ask you to introduce yourself, to tell us a little bit about iCIMS and about you and yourself and also the work that you do.
Yeah, as I said, I mean, we literally, our mission is to help the world's biggest companies and best brands build their winning workforce. And winning workforce is kind of a ever-changing term in terms of how people understand, what is my workforce? Once upon a time, it meant full-time workers. Now it's full-time, part-time, gig, contingent, white collar, blue collar, and so it's ever evolving. But our software platform or cloud literally is all about enabling recruiters and giving them the superpowers that they need to hire talent at scale. And as you can imagine, like if you think about the last person you hired, right? You probably had like a Zoom link and a Word document, the resume. Right. And that does not scale. That is something that you can get away with for like one person. But if the plan is, hey, we've got to hire 1,000 people this year, which your average 10,000 employee company, that's the minimum that they're hiring per year, given attrition as well as expansion. Hiring 1,000 talented people a year, there's recruiters and candidates and applicants and hiring managers and hiring teams, and you're ingesting tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of resumes and scheduling thousands of interviews, and that process has to be scalable if you're going to get talented people. You can hire 1,000 people and not get talented individuals, but I'm pretty sure in today's day and age, it's about getting diverse, digitally skilled, and mission-driven people to grow your company. And that's what our Talent Cloud does, is that it empowers every company to do that.
Perfect. Now, the thing I wanted to really talk to you about, I mean, because I dwell on all things to do with kind of service and experience, and that how employee experience relates to customer experience. And the thing that I noticed recently is that you published this new research report, which is called 2021 Workforce Report: Respond, Recover, Readapt. And I wanted to ask you a little bit about it, or to ask you to tell me a little bit about it. And what are some of the main headlines that you found that were coming out of the report?
Yeah, it's a fascinating report. It's worth mentioning the data behind it, so people can get a sense for what we're talking about. So, we have roughly 4,300 customers all over the world in over 200 countries. So this is not US or UK specific data, although that is incorporated. You're talking about 35, almost 36 million employees across the world that are represented by those 4,300 customers of ours. So this is a very material set of data. And what we look at is when our customers are posting new jobs anywhere in the world, or applicants, again, anywhere all over the world, are applying for those jobs. And of course, when people are getting hired. So this is applicant data, job posting data, and hire data.
Right.
We create this metadata set about that. So we're not exposing any one company's confidential information, but we're aggregating it up so I can say, hey, you know what? If we take a look at data in manufacturing, right? We can get a very global look at what's going on in manufacturing in terms of job postings, applicant activity, and hiring. So that's the uniqueness of the data set. And normally when we all hear about jobs reports in the UK or US especially, you think payroll starts. So these are, it's lag data, right? It's telling you what happened last month or last quarter. And that's sort of helpful, but the reality is most people want to make decisions on what's going to happen, that lead data, and that's what we have. So that's the background, or sorry for that, but I think the context is helpful.
No, it's useful. I mean, because it's actually kind of it's important. I think it's important to point out it's not respondent data to questions that are included in a survey. This is operational data. This is actually data that is inferences that's based on what has actually happened.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at, so some of this will be global data, some of it will be US specific, but the pandemic is still so asymmetric. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, France had to go into another shutdown, and so we're all experiencing this thing in real time, and just rightly so, very differently country by country, and we're very sensitive to that as well. So I kind of put that little kind of not disclaimer but proviso out there. So I'll give you a little bit of color. So a couple really big things, some of which will be epiphonic, and some of which will not be that shocking.
Sure.
But if you look at the data, the headlines are, number one is hiring is absolutely rebounding. This is happening. And it's happening, again, in a bit of an asymmetric fashion, but it's happening the world over. Some countries have been very, very quick to recover. Others, as I mentioned, France, a little bit less so. And that's not a knock on France. It's just that, they're dealing in a good and positive way with the COVID spike. 91% of companies across the world plan to or are hiring this year. Right. That is very meaningful. By the way, that's like double what it was last year in 2020 when we really, were in the thick of it with COVID.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So very encouraging. The second thing is virtual hiring. And what I mean is hiring through extended technology means is here to stay. So we saw, for example, hiring through text, chat bots, and of course, video, which the video part would not surprise anybody, but I wanted to underscore hiring people through SMS is a real thing. And so is chat bots. And then of course,
I mean, somebody's going like, you want a job?
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's the thing. But if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. If I'm, let's say I work in the restaurant industry, for example, service industry. And so I am more likely to be highly mobile using my phone. I'm not sitting in front of my laptop. I want to engage with a hiring manager at a restaurant over text. And for that, if I want to find out if let's say if I want to find out if there's jobs available at my local pharmacy or grocer or restaurant, I actually want to talk to a chatbot first. Then I would engage with a hiring manager over text. Then I would interview with video over my phone and get hired. And believe it or not, that trend of a candidate discovering a job with a chatbot where there's no human involved, then eventually texting with a recruiter or just a hiring manager at a store, and then doing a video interview and then getting hired with literally meeting no one. That trend is here to stay. That is absolutely insane. You might say, wow, Steve, that's something that happens in tech and blah, blah, blah. No, that actually is happening everywhere. And that is a game changer brought on by COVID, 100%. And so we see that. And then there is hyper competition in a couple of key industries, tech and healthcare. And this is the world over. Healthcare, understandably so, with the global pandemic, it is incredibly difficult to hire highly qualified nurses and doctors, as a case in point right now. Mm-hmm. It is. I can tell you that the war for technology talent is running hot right now. Skilled talent, not technology talent. And then in the world of tech, all the more so. So we're seeing that as a trend. But I will also give you one trend that's a little bit maybe counterintuitive. And this is some US specific data. So today, quite literally today in our jobs report, we are seeing job openings for manufacturing jobs and construction jobs with massive spikes. So manufacturing alone, 37% increase year over year that's construction, in construction job postings. 37% here in the US. Mm-hmm. Applications down 17%. So you're seeing this massive spike in job openings and this very significant and notable 17% decline in job applications. So here we are struggling, saying we need people to get back to work. There are jobs. They are out there and people are applying.
And is that because people's preferences have changed, do you think?
Well, it appears to be when we engage with, say, construction companies or manufacturing, for example, people are still genuinely concerned about COVID. Mm-hmm. They really are. And those are, jobs where you take manufacturing, you may be in close proximity to someone indoors. Construction in particular requires a different skill set. So what we're seeing is lots of construction starts requiring lots of construction jobs. So those get posted. But this is not unskilled labor. There are for electricians, plumbers and the like. Those are skilled, highly certified certified type jobs, and that requires additional training. And we're not seeing people pursue that training, et cetera, et cetera. So you just got to dig through the jobs report to get some of this. I will tell you one last thing. I was chatting with the CEO of a large grocer here in the U.S. They're a national chain, and they provide organic, healthy foods. And we were chatting about, this jobs report, and specifically he said, Steve, we are literally looking at this jobs report data to try and figure out where are people more willing to apply, because that's where we're going to build stores, because we can't hire enough. We just can't right now.
So actually, kind of I guess it's flipping the retail location model on its head, because normally you would build stores based on projected consumer density. But what you're actually kind of like saying now is that actually they're having to almost turn that on their head and go, we need to build stores near to potential employee density.
Correct.
So therefore you make the customers travel to the store rather than the employees travel to the store.
Well, and yeah, exactly. And you can't help but, it's conjecture, but think that the dynamic of, food delivery services, at least, the ones that I'm familiar with, Instacart and the like, mm-hmm. are probably significantly impacting it. I didn't really have my groceries delivered before, and now I have my groceries delivered every week.
Right.
That's what I do. And so certainly COVID is pushing that as well. So I think the consumer density becomes a little less relevant, and it's worker, accessibility that become probably the first consideration. So it's quite fascinating to see in 1 year how profound the change in the jobs market has been.
Absolutely. I mean, because when we were talking about setting up this podcast, so we discussed a number of different things, and which I wanted to explore with you, given that we are, just over 12 months on from the, not necessarily the outbreak of the pandemic, but just, I guess, the start of the general response, particularly here in the UK and here and in where you are in the US. And the first big thing was this massive move for many people to remote working. So I wanted to ask you about that as like something about, from your perspective, what are some of the, the big lessons and challenges that have been shown up over the last year based on what you've seen from your perspective, your clients and the data, and sort of where do we go from here? What is not new normal? Because there's no such thing as a new normal. It's just like, what does it different look like?
Well, that is a terrific question, and it's almost, it's nuanced by industry, very nuanced. That answer is very different for, say, hospitality and transportation.
Yeah,
than
of course.
It is tech and healthcare. It's just radically different, and then everything in between, manufacturing, services, and the like. But what we have learned, number one, is that this shift, and this has a very significant impact, not just in what you'd characterize as classically white collar jobs, but this notion of remote working. It is here to stay. It's not going away. Like when the internet showed up and people said, "Wow, this is pretty cool." It wasn't just like a fad, right? It changed everything. And if you look at the world that we live in today, pre-COVID, it's interesting. So 1/3 of the population on the planet lives in Europe and North America, largely. 2/3 lives in Asia. Yet Western companies out of Europe and in North America and the US more acutely here in North America, tend to hire a majority of their employees. This is just fact in Europe, North America. Yet 2/3 of the population exists elsewhere. So now that we're seeing this, hey, you can work from anywhere, it really opens up the talent pool. And if you truly believe that talent is equally distributed, the talent is equally distributed, but opportunity is not, it's going to change. It's going to change a lot about who we hire, where we hire, when we hire, because the time zone becomes largely irrelevant. That's one thing. The other is it's changing the very nature of work. We have seen a massive uptick in something that I didn't even think about even pre-COVID, which is gig work. And I'm not talking about like Uber and Instacart and the like. I'm talking about internal gig work where we're seeing employers say, hey, we don't want to, fire, heaven forbid, or furlough a large swath of our employees. So we're going to create internal gig or project-based work that employees who are maybe underemployed can go contribute to elsewhere in the organization. That's new.
Yeah, that is new.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? If you think about, there's a customer of ours, a very, very large customer who's a cable TV and entertainment, television operator, and they have, thousands of technicians that would get in a truck, drive to your home, set up your internet and your cable. And now, when COVID hit, they had to shift to we'll ship you a box and you call tech support model. What do you do with thousands of highly trained technicians that happen to drive trucks, let alone the trucks? What do you do with that? And so understanding the skill sets of those employees and looking for opportunities to redeploy them on projects or gigs, either in your company or with your business partners, is something that organizations to hold on to talent have had to do, because we know there's a point in time where the economies are recovering. There are very promising signs in the UK, very promising signs in the US, and certainly China seems to be sustaining some level or modicum of growth. So when you start to see that, the question is, do you really want to part with this talent that was hard fought to win? And the answer is no. So, the trends are there are so many things happening that are here to stay. But what I can unequivocally say is, more than anything else, the distribution of opportunity is going to radically reshape the talent marketplace in general.
Right. If I can, I want to go back to the work from home comment that you made around it's here to stay, and I wanted to understand, or ask you at least, because we've heard various people have said, "Oh, we can," different CEOs have gone, "Oh no, we can work from wherever forever," as it were, and then sort of kind of like almost step back from that, and then. So I guess my question is going to be is that what I want to ask is the work from home thing, and it's here to stay? Is it that we're going to just adopt a more permanent hybrid model, or is it going to be different and nuanced, as like you say, depending on the industry?
I think that it's going to be It's still a little too early to say exactly what it will be, but here's what I know unequivocally. Mm-hmm. Whatever it was pre-COVID, we are not going back to that.
Right.
No way. Right. And the primary reason for that argument is the productivity gains by having to maintain less physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Giving people, I'm not saying everyone likes this, but giving people more flexibility in terms of, there's no commute. I just got 2 hours back during the day. Now, does everyone like, as we've flipped the switch from, working from home to living at work is what it feels like? No, I don't think we like that. Mm-hmm. But I think that the productivity gains are too advantageous. And there is a significant amount of the employee, kind of market or labor force out there that just would prefer to work from home. They just would. And so here's what's going to happen. And this is kind of the there's a little bit of a staring contest right now, especially in areas like our business tech, where you want to say, well, okay, right, everybody, let's get back to the office Monday to Friday. Let's do that. Mm-hmm. That is not the right answer. And every tech company out there knows that if they're the first company to say that, right, Monday to Friday, back to the office, the tech companies that are offering flexibility, hey, if you want to work from home, knock yourself out. They're the ones that are going to win more talent. Why? Because it's choice. Yeah. So I think there will be those companies that move quickly to get back into the office because that Monday to Friday, that fits their culture.
Right.
Then there's going to be companies that say, hey, we need to have some kind of flexible environment. And, there's some hybrid model. Then there's going to be organizations where they just flat out say, look, we're not hybrid. You can just, it's sort of hybridized, but it's more like less prescribed or dictated and more do what you want. If you want to work remotely, we don't care where you live, knock yourself out.
Right.
There's a long list of companies that is their plan, is to say, if you want to come into the office Monday to Friday, terrific. If you want to work from home Monday to Friday, terrific. The hard part for all of us is going to be, how do you build culture?
Yes.
You have a widely distributed workforce, half, working from home, half in the office. How do you build culture? How do you bring people together, and how do you build community?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's lessons to be learned from people that have worked remotely since the get-go, particularly in the tech industry. They've always been remote. I think about people like Automatic. I think about people like Basecamp and things, and they routinely going to bring their people together on a periodic kind of basis because they understand the importance of that. But they operate largely remotely. But they understand that there are points where it's important to try and bring people together to develop that connection.
Well, you're so right. And, the one call out, what I will totally agree. Here's the thing, is if the intent in getting back into the office, if the intent is, hey, you're just going to come into the office and do the same work that you could do from home, mm-hmm. I can assure whomever is listening to this that you are doing it wrong. This has to be whatever getting back into the office looks like as we go forward. It has to be different. It has to be profoundly more rotated towards community building, culture building than just come into the office, sit in at your desk or in your cube, and do the exact same thing you could do from home, but your dog's not barking.
Yeah.
There has to be more to it than that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so. Because it just feels a bit like you're only back in the office so we can lord it over you. Exactly. And that just, you sort of measured on just presence rather than actually output.
Yep. And that's, I think it's as we embark, with the ever increasing amount of vaccinations into this. I'll give you real time. We've been, iSIMS, we are a people company, talent acquisition, and we've labored, and fretted and reviewed. I can't even tell you how many times our back to office strategy. And the one thing I keep coming back to as CEO is choice. Mm-hmm. We have to give people choice. We talk about things like diversity and inclusion, and clearly that is one of the most, if not the most, important and pressing, kind of opportunity and challenge in front of every company in the world today. But what I will say is inclusion is also going to mean, going forward, vaccinated and unvaccinated. Yeah. Every company will face the challenge where, 30, 40% of your workforce may not want to get vaccinated.
Sure.
How do you treat them?
Exactly. So the thing that I wanted to ask, because you mentioned about this emerging sort of hybrid employee experience. The thing I also wanted to think about, I was thinking about over the last year, was because many firms had still been hiring, and that made me wonder about the impact of just on the onboarding, the employee experience, their overall performance. And because I know that when you think about customers, the whole, I feel like the buying experience, the onboarding experience, whether you're B2C or B2B sort of thing, is absolutely key, getting it right initially. And the same can be said for new employees, sort of onboarding them, getting them started, getting them up to speed, helping them kind of like meet people, all these different things. But that's been profoundly different over the last 12 months. What have you seen in terms of that and how firms and employees, have adapted? Because I think that's absolutely crucial for new folks, particularly over the last, or will have been for the last 12 months at least.
Yeah, it's quite shocking how much it's changed in just 12 months.
Right.
What I can tell you is both in terms of attracting talent, as well as then, kind of at time of hire onboarding new employees, the pendulum has swung hard towards video.
Right.
And if you look at, and there's obvious and understandable reasons for that. How else are we going to get engaged right now except through the television here, through our mobile phones and the like? But there's two elements to this. So one is, video is the kind of center of gravity for how to just attract amazing talent. If you look at customers of ours like Target, which is a very large retailer here in the US, or Aldi as a case in point, another global retailer, go to their career sites. You will find these pop-up videos that you can scroll through, quite literally hundreds and hundreds of them, of these videos. And these are TikTok-like videos that are, in a literal sense, they are created by employees using an app from us, from iSIMS, on their phone. And all of these videos get loaded into one location that the recruiting team manages, and they're automatically linked to the career site. And you can, instead of reading a boring job description that was probably written by legal, you can listen to an authentic, real video that it's not this highly edited production quality thing, just a real kind of like TikTok-like experience, and understand, well, what's it like to really work there? Or what do they like about the culture? And so you get that kind of exposure and experience. And doing so, it creates a level of authenticity that today's candidates, today's talent, they want. And in fact, we know there's this research by Korn Ferry that 2/3 of applicants out there, and this is not specific to a country, they won't even apply to your company if you can't convey in an authentic manner that diversity and equity and inclusion are a key focus area for you. And your company's not going to accomplish that by paying $2 million to create that high production quality video saying, yep, we're awesome here and we care about diversity and inclusion. It has to be real. Now, to your question, how do you do that for onboarding? That's the same thing.
Right.
The onboarding experience, because it relied heavily pre-COVID on, hey, you're going to come in and we're going to have some people meet with you and we'll take you through stuff. It's gone.
Yes.
That is gone. And so we're providing today this platform. We happen to call it Video Studio, that literally allows you to, even with onboarding content, allow your employees to create, the kind of real-time, 1 minute, 2 minute explainer videos for literally thousands of topics that all get stored in one location. That's the kind of transformation that COVID has driven in a short 12 months. And that's something that we're now doing for hundreds and hundreds of our customers, a few of which I mentioned with Target and Aldi.
And, how much control does kind of like Target kind of have over who contributes to that? I mean, just out of interest, or is that just like, they're just going like, we're going to crowdsource it because we're going to, trust our kind of people to speak their truth, as it were?
Well, that is, when you do this kind of thing at scale, what you can't do is put the burden on your recruiting team to say, hey, why don't you sort through thousands of employee videos, watch every single one, and make sure that they have the right sentiment and convey the right message?
Sure.
That's where AI and machine learning kick in. What we do is we take literally, for Target, we ingest those hundreds of employee created videos. Our AI engine transcribes all of the video to text. Mm-hmm. And our machine learning engine analyzes every single one of those videos with the text to make sure that they're positive sentiment, that there's no profanity in the videos, and you can even search them. So if you're looking for words like love, or you're looking for sentiment like someone's leaning in the video, you can actually analyze all of that. So we provide a nice summary dashboard, and then you can pick and choose those videos that bubble to the top to link to your career site. So you're being transparent and authentic, but of course the recruiting team or talent acquisition team has some modicum of control over this. And the fascinating thing is we actually do the flip side as well, which is if an applicant for a job wants to apply, creating a video, not just using their resume that just kind of gets sorted with thousands of others, we allow that as well. And that is a very powerful system that it gives recruiters and companies a different dimension other than this highly refined document we call a resume. So you can analyze sentiment of an applicant, thousands of them at a time using our machine learning engine. So this video, technology is really changing everything.
No, it's interesting to hear, because I just been pondering kind of a lot of this sort of stuff. I mean, when it's particularly the onboarding side of the employee experience, but also there's this other side of things over the last 12 months. I mean, I cottoned onto something, I think back in July of last year, and I wrote about the sort of these imperatives that I thought were emerging from the first wave of the pandemic. And then one of them was this experience domain, and how experience I thought was kind of like splitting out into different subdomains. Customer being one, employee being another, stakeholder being another one. But then there was this other one which I saw was emerging, which I called the experience of the leader, because it seemed to me that many companies were asking their leaders to look after their people, but it seemed to me there was a bit of a gap in the leaders themselves being looked after. And that was echoed by the data, which was saying that engagement numbers for employees were going up because they were appreciating the flexibility and what companies were doing for them and so on and so forth. But actually, people that were in leadership and management supervisory roles, those numbers were softening because they were almost just like running out of steam, as it were, because there were some big assumptions kind of made that you move from, we've got people in management supervisory leadership positions that were equipped to deal with things and perform in a certain paradigm, but then that paradigm's completely changed. And we assumed that they could cope with it, but the data shows that they weren't really able to cope. And that's why I thought, well, actually, we need to really look more closely at the experience of the leader, because actually it's the connective tissue that holds a lot of the organization together. And I just wanted to run that by you, given that you're the guy with all the data from across the planet, as it were. And are you seeing some of the same things?
Well, unequivocally. First of all, people quit managers.
Yeah.
They don't quit companies. They quit. And I've always said, in my career is that, and even as the CEO, I understand very acutely that the CEO sets the tone for culture. There's no doubt in my mind. But I am not the company to a frontline employee. Their manager is the company.
Yeah.
That is how so every single manager, every single people leader in your organization, even if it's a manager of 2 people, it doesn't matter. They set the tone for what the company is to your employees. So if you are not obsessed down to the level of developing leadership for all of your managers and culture within your leadership team, how do you handle employee development, conflict resolution? How do you focus on your values that you have as a company? One of our values is customer obsession. And I can assure you that means very, very different things to everybody that comes in the door. And we have to help our employees, and more to your question, our managers understand, well, what does customer obsession mean to us? How do we handle that? And if someone on your team maybe misses the mark, how do you coach them up? This isn't about calling them out. Right. And there's a big difference between the two. But for me, it's, the notion of constantly listening, learning, and engaging, driving upskilling within your leadership team, remaining, and this is not just ISIM specific, obviously, customer obsessed, and then continuing to help your leaders in particular grow. And this is something that I don't think companies focus on enough. And one of the things that I do here at iSIMS, and I've done at my previous companies, is I teach a short but nonetheless kind of manager course, if you will, where we bring in different managers once a month, and I spend time talking about our culture, our values, leadership, what it means to me, how can we think about being better leaders, in general, and developing our management team. Because look, this is a team sport, leadership, and it's something that I think what you're calling out is often in a probably disappointing way, often ignored, and it's assumed that we can just bring in let's bring in a leadership training thing or have someone take some manager training, and that makes them a good leader or manager. And it's quite the opposite. So leaning in there, incredibly important.
Perfect. So, Steve, just like, I know you mentioned Target and stuff, but do you have a couple of other sort of examples of firms that you think that offer good examples or exemplars of how they've coped over the last sort of 12 months and are, if you like, leading the way that we can watch and learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's lots of great names that leverage iSIMS for a variety of things. One of my favorite ones that's near and dear to me is the American Heart Association. So they're a big user of the iSIMS Talent Cloud platform, which is what we call our solution. And they, per annum, they draw in about 225,000 new candidates per year. And as you can imagine, the American Heart Association, it quite literally is a life and death proposition where your work impacts people's lives directly. And what we deliver is the Talent Cloud, and our automation that we're delivering in the recruiting process is saving them thousands, is the measure of how they think about it, of hours of productivity per year with their recruiting team. 50% more time with their recruiting team spent building relationships versus reading resumes and processing activity. And isn't that what we're supposed to be doing? Is building relationships and understanding candidates as human beings. And a 200% increase in the amount of candidates that they were able to handle and interact with because of the automation. So that's a great case in point. Another one in transportation is Linden And they actually use text engagement. We talked about this a little earlier. So this is engaging with with candidates. They had a massive truck driver shortage, and as you can imagine, in the world of COVID, where you need more, trucks and more truck drivers, this was a huge challenge. But by moving to text engagement versus, hey, let's do the old recruit over, you need a computer and submit your resume. That is not what that industry needs. So giving Linden and that great recruiting team, iCIMS text engagement platform, they saw a 97% increase in applicants, 49% increase in mobile app usage, and a 60% lower turnover than the industry by using our platform. And so this is where you start to see these really game-changing, moves. And one other, example is there's this wellness company, Isogenics, and they cut the time that it takes to fill a position in half. And this is not uncommon. We see this in every industry where companies switch to iCIMS, where you're seeing like Isogenics has this 50% reduction in how long it takes to hire and then onboarding by 95%. So, if you think about a new employee experience, if I'm able to get hired 50% faster and I'm able to onboard, by 95% more quickly, I mean, that's just the employee experience is game changing. And this is what improves employee retention. It's what improves culture. So we're seeing this over and over and over again across our 4,300 customers.
I think it's fascinating because I remember speaking to somebody the other day that I got introduced to, and they for a potential project, and they said to me, "Can you send me your CV?" And I kind of nearly snorted my coffee out of my nose at the time, and I was like going, "I haven't had a CV for nearly 20 years."
Exactly.
I was
There's
like going,
this thing called the internet, right?
I'm sorry. I can talk to you, and I can introduce you to a couple of people that can talk to you about me and things, but I don't have a CV. And I think that's fascinating. But the idea that there's this other way of doing it, which is fascinatingly kind of like around sort of text engagement, is that makes complete sense.
That's what you're calling out. This is what people need to know. It is not, let's write a boring job description, highly edited by legal, stick it on a site, maybe put an ad on a monster.com and hope someone shows up. That is not a strategy. That is not it. Yeah. And being able to engage the candidates that you want at your company through social, mobile, email, web, and the like, and do it dynamically. Build a talent marketplace, a talent pool of tens of thousands of potential candidates that you're constantly staying in touch with. So when you need to hire, it's not, oh my God, let's go scramble and try and put an ad up. You already have a talent marketplace of talent to draw from that wants to come to your company. And then you engage them meaningfully through video, through text, and the like. And their candidate experience is second to none. That whole end-to-end process, it is a thing that exists and is very achievable by companies today. And it's the organizations that choose to, just, hey, here's a job description and a resume and a Zoom link. Let me know how the interview goes. They will fail. They will lose this talent war.
Yeah. Perfect. So, Steve, I just want to kind of like then sort of flip it a little bit and say, well, are those some of the key challenges you think are going to define the future of this, of say, employee experiences, like how companies choose to engage with and leverage technology to drive a more positive employee experience, particularly when we're in an ever evolving, ever shifting sort of environment right now?
Well, I think there's probably 4 or 5 key challenges everyone should download and keep in the back of their mind. One is definitely what you called out, the evolving labor market. As consumer needs change, and what we just talked about with being a little bit ago on grocers and grocery stores, the reality is is that as consumer needs change, and whether that's COVID impact or delivery, it's going to have a profound impact. Although it will be asymmetric, but it will be profound market by market. So evolving labor. Number two is a widening skill gap. The reality, right now, and again, I believe this is, I think it's Korn Ferry data. I hope I'm not misquoting, but they assert that by the year 2030, but it's not that far away, so 9 years from now, that there will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 85 million jobs globally. Massive, like it's an unfathomable number that will go unfilled due to skill shortage. So, I mean, it's already very material today, the world over, millions and millions of jobs. Mm-hmm. So that's the second one, is skill gap. The third is a need for reskilling and upskilling. I find it ironic that, the world over, I think every, major government is investing in recovery, which is a good thing. But where does that recovery, we talk about things like infrastructure needs and the like. How about reskilling and upskilling our workforces collectively? Mm-hmm. Certainly in the US and the UK, and there's so much opportunity for upskilling and reskilling talent. And that needs to be part of, I think, any recovery package in any country. Another big one is no location barriers. The reality is, as we talked about, this is just going to change the game. And then I would say, diversity and inclusion. This in particular is something that we face this challenge and opportunity the world over, and we have an opportunity, I think, to more equally distribute, jobs and opportunity itself, and we should. And then finally is, how do you continue to develop and maintain personalization while driving automation? There's no way companies can scale, or drive hiring talent at scale without automation. But with automation, there's that, kind of constant, fight between what do you automate and how do you maintain personalization. So that's something that it's our job here at iCIMS to help, anyone within earshot, but any of our customers, to drive automation to achieve hiring talent at scale, but maintaining personalization and not losing your culture or your identity in that process.
Perfect. Those are some, it's a good list. It's like a to-do list or a checklist for people. And so, I mean, that feels like a good place to sort of like, to almost like round it off and give people a watch list on what to do next, Steve. And so, if I may, I think I might just kind of leave it there and finish by asking you a couple of my serial questions that I ask at the end of these interviews, and those related to, linked to kind of my Punk CX books that I published back in 2019, and I ask people these two questions that I call almost like word association questions. And so, but the first one I would like to ask is, what one or two words would you use to describe a more punk approach to experience?
Well, I don't know if it's one or two words, but I'm pretty sure it's one word. I'll have to check like Merriam-Webster, but it's counterculture. I think counterculture, correct me if I'm wrong, but punk has and still is about counterculture.
Yeah.
And if it's about rejecting the notion that you must have this boring job description, that you must have this dry career site that no one is actually interested in visiting, that not getting back to applicants is just part of this because there's just too many to deal with. That notion is not just tired, it is expired. And there is a way to engage at scale, do compelling things, and make this team sport of hiring something that people rally around. And it is a real differentiator. So I'm going to go with counterculture.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And so the accompanying one, as it were, is what company or brand do you think epitomizes that type of approach?
Oh, there's lots of, there's some really exciting ones, but I think I will say, the cliche one would be Apple. I think they do a tremendous job of engaging. So I'm a fan there. I think they do a tremendous job. And I will say, I actually think, and boy, this is a tough one because I'm going to get in trouble if I say a company like it's like which of your kids is best. So I won't say whether it's not necessarily these are not necessarily customers of iSIM. So I will just I'm just calling out companies that I like. I think Microsoft does an extraordinary, world-class job of driving engagement with applicants and candidates. And by the way, their focus on things like accessibility is extraordinarily important. They have, in a good way, they have challenged us to be better as a technology company, and we've accepted that challenge. I'm a really big fan of what they do, and that's I know it's very industry specific. It's tech. There are myriad other examples I could give you, but I'm a huge fan of what they do.
Perfect. And I like the reference to sort of accessibility because it's a topic that doesn't necessarily get as much attention as it should, particularly around sort of technology. But Steve, I just want to say thank you for sharing your time and your experience and your insight with us today, particularly around this emerging, impact of the pandemic on jobs and the employee experience and the experience of the leader and all those different things and things that we should need to look out for. So thank you for that. That's been great.
Well, thank you for, the time and for what you do. I mean, I think you bring a lot of energy and attention to an incredible range of topics. But I'm going to take this punk energy and I'm going to take it back to the team here at iSIMS and get them inspired to focus on some of this stuff. But thank you.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing kind of people. And it's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. One final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as they say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.